All right, good morning, gentlemen. Today is Daf Pei Zayin, Maseches Eruvin, as we're winding it down towards the end. So don't worry, it gets easier. The path gets easier. Eruvin is actually one of the hardest Masechtas, if not the hardest Masechta. So don't be discouraged by the difficulty. So we're just gonna. We left off yesterday at the top of Pei Zayin Amud Aleph, but just a couple lines to go, to explain. So I'm going to the bottom of Pei Vav Amud Beis. Amar Rabba says Rabba, 4 lines on the bottom. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Chanina ben Akiva, Akavia, Amnu Davar Echad. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Chananya ben Akavia said the same thing. So Rabbi Yehuda had the Amran, Rabbi Yehuda, that which is said earlier, that's a wall which can be, I guess, between a chatzir, can also be basically the wall for the water. And Rabbi Chanani ben Akavia, what does he say? The Tani with the Rabbi Chanani ben Akavia Omer, Gazuz Torah. We're actually going to see this in a later Mishnah. Sheyesh ba arba amos al arba amos. If you have basically a board, right, and it's 4 amos by 4 amos. Now, the thing to remember about 4 amos is it's 24 tefachim. So basically 24 tefachim. If you have 4 by 4, then what's the halacha? Right? Then basically you can magically, when I don't say magically, it's really halachically, right? Halachically basically carve out in the middle. If it's 4 amos by 4 amos, that means it's 24 tefachim by 24 tefachim. So if you cut out 4 by 4 in the middle, then it leaves you an area basically with sides that are each 10 from the edge of the 4 by 4, right? Because it's 10 each side. There's a picture in the art scroll. I'll send a picture. And therefore, those walls there, halachically, if you carve out one in the middle, right? Halachically carve out, then other walls, once again, halachically go down and become its walls. So basically, you have a hole here. And now these walls basically go down. And it's like you can go ahead and bring up water because now you have walls where the water is being drawn from. So perhaps these two are the same thing because they both hold that the walls on top can basically go down to be the walls underneath. However, Amar le Abaye, top line, Pei Zayin Amud Aleph, Amar le Abaye, the Dumaloi, perhaps they're not exactly the same shittas. Why? Ad kan lo yikamer Rabbi Yehuda Hassam ela damar gudachis mechitzas. Over there, he just says the wall can go down. Right? Now, if you have a wall up here, then it can be used to be considered lower down into the water. Aval kaif. To go the good low, but to go ahead and bend it, right? In our case, all you have is a platform, like a big board with a hole in the middle, right? But to go ahead and say basically that these walls match or halachically bend down, right, from all 4 sides and become your walls to draw the water, that maybe that Rabbi doesn't say. Maybe only you started discussing the water as a tveria of the yeshla because it has wide, has cities all around it and banks all around it, and therefore it's sort of within within an area, right? However, an ocean or a sea or something that's vast, right, and there are no basically walls around it, maybe we wouldn't have such a kula in order to halachically say that the walls basically bend over it, and therefore you can go ahead and draw the water from it. Fine. Amar Abaye says, Abaye, second wide line. Now, we're going to say 3 cases using these halachas, right, of Rabbi Chananya ben Akavia. So he says, if you're within a wall. Now, remember, he said if you have a one board with a hole in the middle, then you can magically make 4 walls. Now we're going to be scenarios where you actually don't need 4 walls. You can even use 3 walls, such as, let's say you have a board sticking out from the house. Is within 3 tvachim. So its width has to be 24 tvachim, which is 4 amos, right? Because remember, 6 to 1. And its width has to be 11 and a half. All right, that's case number 1. All right, well, I'll explain that case in a second. Let me just show you guys the picture. This looks like a good picture. This one right here. Those we have so you sort of see here's the sticking out, and here's the top view of what it looks like. All right. So basically, the Gemara does not explain it. Rashi explains. So the way to understand it, if you look at that picture, basically what I have is, remember before we had the 4 walls because you had the hole in the middle, and each side you had 10 tefachim, so those halachically bend down. Over here, you only need to do it on 3 sides. right? So you have the two sides because it's 24 long, so that's easy, right? You have the 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim in the middle, right? And then you have on each side. So what about the back side? So one, you have the house. So the house can act as one wall. So where's the wall on the other side? So basically, if you carve out a little bit, we said it has to be, why did it say it has to be 11 and 11 plus, 11.1? Why? Because if you take out 10 tefachim for the wall on the other side of the hole, it leaves you 1.1 tefachim, and it has to be within 3 tefachim of the wall, so 2.9. So it's 1.1 of wall. You carve that out, right? And therefore, it's now a host. So therefore, because you're basically, if you have 1.1 to the wall, you can say lover, right? Because it's 1.1 and 2.9. Since it's 2.9 is less than 3, therefore you can say lover. So therefore, right, this little area is where that your that little crevice there is where the hole is going to be, and therefore basically you have now walls on all 4 sides, one of which is actually the wall of the house. That was case number 1. Case number 2 is Haisa Zakufa. If the board, instead of being, like a balcony, right? If the board was just basically, facing in front of you, right? It was obviously you can't stand on it because it's just facing in front of you. But since there's a wall, basically parallel to the wall, and then you can go down. How wide is that wall to be? Haisa Zakufa has to be at least 10 tefachim tall, right? The board, because now that can actually the entire thing can act as a wall. And the width has to be 6 and 2 mashus. What does that mean, 6 and 2 mashus? Because one side will have to be 4 tefachim, right? And then the other 2 sides will say it's 1.1 tefach on each end of the 4. And then those halachically bend over, right? If you have something halachically bend over, which is 1.1, so you can say 1.1, and now it's close to the wall. It's 2.9 away from the wall. So you can say love it on the 1.1 to the wall. Now it's 4 tefachim. So you have 4 tefachim on each side, plus the 4 tefachim in the back, the width of it, and the 4 tefachim in the house. Now you have 4 sides. You can go ahead and draw water. In the third case, Amarav Huna Breda Yeshua, Haisa Omedis Bekaren Zavis. Now let's say you, instead of having it against a flat wall, you have it towards the corner. So then in this case, you have what? Its width has to be much less, right? All you need in this case is that it has to be 10 tefachim tall, because that's going to be the height of the wall, right? And its width is actually only 2 tefachim and 2 mashus. Why? Because all you need is basically the corner to quote unquote halachically bend, and therefore now you have 4 corners because each one is 1.1 plus the 2.9 of airspace between the wall. 1.1 plus 2.9 is 4 tefachim there, and you have 4 tefachim there, and then you have the 2 walls, and therefore now you have 4 walls where you can go ahead and draw water from the inside. So all these cases work out according to his ruling. Velo had the time which is in the Bryce. Okay, so if that's the case, when we just said before, you have a balcony, right? And all you need, it has to be 4 amos by 4 amos. Why? In order to go ahead and carve out in the middle, right? A hole in the middle, 4 by 4 tefachim. Now you have 4 sides. So when do you ever need 4 sides? If it's always a balcony coming out from a house, you can always use the 4th side as the house. It doesn't have to be 4 amos wide. All it has to be is, which is 24. All you need is basically, 11 tefachim, 11.1 tefachim. So what is this with this 24 by 4 amos? Why does it have to be 24 tefachim? So the answer is Davida Kiasisa. When you basically go ahead and it's made all the way further out, right? It's all the way further out, not next to the wall, right? So therefore, it's considered to be its own area sticking up. It's right, like on pillars or something like that. Therefore, in that area, because you don't have the advantage of using walls from any side, therefore that's the case. So we have to go ahead and use 4 by 4 amos in order to go ahead and carve out in the middle. Fine.
So it's like its own platform in the water.
Right, exactly. And therefore, right, you have any walls, and therefore you have to use all 4 sides of the bending down, and therefore we'll say it has to be 4 amos by 4 amos, which is another way of saying 24 tefachim by 24 tefachim, because then you can take out the 4 for the whole and 10 on each side. All right, let's do a Naya Mishnah. Mishnah says, gets a little easier now. So amos hamayim. She overes b'chatzer. If you have, let's say, a water, right? Imagine a little brook or something, water going under between fences, and it goes between travels. You can't use it on Shabbos. Unless you go ahead and it travels through your backyard, you have to put basically a wall of 10 tefachim into the water into the area, right, of where the water goes, in order to basically give you mechitzas by the water. However, Rabbi Yehuda argues on the Tanakama. What does he say? Kaisel shal gava tidain mishum mechitza. He says no. If you have the waters, the water's in the ground, and you have a fence over it. Okay, so the fence over the ground counts as your fence, right, for the water, right? And therefore the water is considered like it's sort of closed off in your yard, and therefore you can go ahead and draw it while you're standing in your chutzir from the water into your chutzir. That would be much to do. And Amar Rabbi Yehuda Ma'isa b'Yamashel Evel. One time there was the river or canal in Evel. Shemalin mimena al pi zakein b'Shabbos. Used to go ahead and with the permission of the zakein, they would go ahead and draw it on Shabbos. So you see, it's a proof. You don't need fences in the water. All you need is the fence on top, right, at the ground level. However, maybe that was different. Maybe the canal wasn't deep enough. Maybe it wasn't, right? It was, we'll soon see, 10 deep by 4 wide, which would make it a carmelist, and therefore make it prohibited. Maybe it was smaller. If it's smaller, maybe it's only Rishus HaYachid, and therefore it'd only be an issue of taking from Rishus HaYachid, which would not be Aser. So let's see the Gemara. Zak the Gemara. Satan Rabbanim. Asulay b'kanisa. If you only made a wall on one side and not the other, but this is according to the verse Shita, which says you have to put the walls in the water. You can't go ahead and take the water from there. Shabbos, unless you go ahead and make a mechitza of 10 tvachim, both on the entrance and in the exit. And Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Kaisel Shal Gaba, Tidan Mishum Mechitza. Says Rabbi Yehuda, once again, the same Rabbi Yehuda Shita as our Mishnah. No, even the one, the fence that's on the ground above the water, that counts as the fence, both at the entrance and the beginning. And Amr Rabbi Yehuda Ma'isa B'Amas Hamayim Sha'isa Ba Me'evel Tzipor. One time there was with the water, the brook that went from Evel to Tzipor. V'Hayim Alim Amel B'Shabbos, used to go ahead and fill out Shabbos. Al Pi as a Kanim through the permission as a Kanim. So they said to him, Misham Raya, over there is a proof. Mipnei Shalo Ha'isa Amuka Asar Tvachim V'Reich V'Dal. Over there, the reason was because it wasn't basically 10 by 4, and therefore it didn't give a halachic status of a carmelist to make it forbidden. So Tan Idach, we have another brisa stated. So he says, if you have water pass by a window, right? So basically you have houses, and then you have water running along the side of the houses, and it goes. So now we have a vague comment, which we're now going to try to understand. Now, Pachas Megimel Mashal Shadali Umali. Gimel and Mashal Shadali Mali. According to the Tanakama, if it is 3 tfachim, what is it? The word it is going to be, there's a machlokes in the Gemara what it is referring to, right? So it says if it's less than 3 tefachim, they can go ahead and draw the water. If it's more than 3 tefachim, then you can't take the water from the windows. You can't draw it to the houses. That was the opinion of the Tanakama, who holds the numbers 3 tefachim. No. If it's less than 4 tefachim, then you can draw the water. However, dalid, but if it's 4 or more, you can't go ahead and lower the pail and fill up the water. Now, b'maya skina, what are you talking about? What does Tanakama say? 3 or less is okay, but 3 or more is no good. And what does Rabbi Shingalil say? We're talking about 4 or less, 4 tefachim, both in 3 tefachim versus 4 tefachim. What's going on here? B'maya skina. So, if we're talking about maybe the width of the water itself, right? So that which we say, now if you're arguing over here, the machlokes says what is considered to be a carmelus, and one opinion says 3, the other opinion says 4. So that which Rav Dimi said in the name of Rabbi Yechon, a carmelus is not less than 4, right? Lema katanai. So that they say that opinion does not go according to everyone. So machlokes tanaim, whether carmelus, right, has to be a minimum of 3 tefachim or 4 tefachim, that doesn't make sense. Ella. No, we're not talking about the width of the water. The water is already more than 4 tefachim. That's not an argument. We're talking about on the banks of the water. It was dug up a little bit on the sides next to the houses, and over there was a little mound on the edge of the water on the sides of the houses. So the question is, can you go ahead, draw the water from there, put it on the mound, and from there take it into the house? Basically, it's like a makom patur, right? All right. So another question is like this: if you have something which is not 4 by 4 tefachim, right? People from Rishus HaYachid can go ahead and they're holding a package. They can put it on this mound because it's less than 4 by 4, right? Or if he's in a Shus Rabin, you can go ahead and put it on the thing and take it back. Ubilvad shelo yachvenu. In order that you can't take from one side to the other. So wait, what's going on here? We're saying over here, if it's less than 4, right? It seems to say that it's mutter to go ahead and put it on, right? You can go ahead and take the water in the pail, put it on the bank, and take it from the bank into the house. But we see over here that in case of between the Rishus Rab and Rishus Yachid, right? You can't go ahead and put it on the Makom Tour and take it from there into the other Rishus. So why is one mutter, one is usher? So Gemara says, no, maybe over there, Hasim Rishus Daraisa. Over there was talking about the two differences, the two sides. One's Rishus Yachid, the other's Rishus Rabim. So we don't want you to go take it directly from Rishus Yachid to Rishus Rabim. Therefore, we'll say you can't go ahead and bring it to the Makom Tour and the Makom Tour to the other Rishus. But however, our case, Hacha Rishus Darabanan, over here, we're talking about the water, which is only a Carmelis, and the house, which is Rishus Hayachid. So Carmelis Rishus Hayachid is not a Daraisa. So therefore, maybe then it's mutter to go ahead and use the bank, right? As long as it's a Makom P'tur, as long as it's less than 3 or 4, which is the machlokes between the Tanakama and a Shengalil. But the Gemara says, but there was also a time when Rabbi Yochanan said that it is forbidden, even if taking from both sides. Forget the Makom P'tur. Even if you're taking directly from one side to the other, it was only Derabanan, it would still be usher to go ahead and put it in the Makom P'tur, and the Makom P'tur there. He said it in another case. Which case? Now we learn in the Mishnah. So if you have a wall between two Chatzeros and this wall itself is 10 Tfachim tall, and it's 4 Tfachim wide. It's very wide, right? We had this case earlier. We were discussing about taking things from on top of the wall and back. Right. So first of all, if you have the wall between two chatzeros, Marvin Shnai and Marvin Echad, you have to make 2 erevs. You can't make one because they're considered to be separated by this wall of 4 tvachim wide and 10 tvachim tall. And if there was fruit on top, each one can go up and eat the fruits from on top, right? It's not separated. However, if the wall broke, if the wall, the breach in the wall was less than 10, up until 10 amos, they can go ahead and still make 2 Erev, because it's only a Pesach. And if they want, they could also make 1 Erev, basically be ma'ariv with one another, because there's already a breach in the wall. The hole is not too big. However, it's only a Pesach. But if the breach was larger than 10 amos, then basically the wall is considered like it's not there. Then it's dafka marav in echad ve'ein marav in shnai. Then you can only make it 1 erev. It's all considered 1 and not 2. And we asked over there in that Gemara, ein bo arba mai. Let's say the wall was 10 tvachim tall, but it wasn't 4 wide. It was less than 4. It was 3. So Amarav of your base of shuyas shalet is bow. So it says Rav over there, it's usher. Why? Because both sides have a right to the top, and this one belongs to that chatzir, and the other one belongs to that chatzir, and it's forbidden. So since it's 2 shuyas shalet is bow, you can't even move 1 hair. And Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yochanan we're discussing now. Amar elu mali mekan va'eichlin ve'elu mali mekan va'eichlin. Each one could go over there, and they can use it, and they can go up there, and they can bring food up there and eat, right? And there, so what do you see over there? That even though to carry from one Rishus Hayachid to the other one is it will only be forbidden D'Rabbanan because there's no Eruv there, he still permits it, right? So over there, so we say over there, and he goes l'shitaso, right? If you have a place which is mutter for Rishus Rabim, to go ahead and do it, you can go ahead and use it. As long as they don't go ahead and put it on the middle thing, and the middle to the other side. Same thing over here, from one Rishus to the other, even though it's not deraisa. So we see Rabbi Yochanan holds that what? Even if it's not a deraisa, it's forbidden to go ahead and take it from one side, move it to the Makom P'tur, and for the Makom P'tur to the other side. So why, back in our case, are you saying that Rabbi Yochanan can say you can go ahead and take from the water, fill a pail with the water, put it on the Makom P'tur, and take it from the Makom P'tur to the other side to use that the Makom P'tur, even on D'Rabbanan, he holds in the case of the wall, you weren't allowed to use it. So why in this case are you allowed to use it? So Gemara says, so answers right? That was Z'iri, right? That case over there, right? In other words, that Rashi points out, that case where he says that each side can go ahead and bring up as long as they don't switch to the other side, that is only Z'iri, right? He says, according to Rabbi Yochanan. However, Rav Dimi will explain Rabbi Yochanan, that would say, since that case is no Doraisa, it would be Mutter Lahachlif. right? So maybe only Ziri was the one who asked it, but not Rav Dimi and Rabbi Yochanan. And therefore, our case, I was Ziri kasha. According to Ziri, who said over there that each one can bring it up, right? You can't take it from one side to the other. So why does it, in our case, is it any different? I was Ziri kasha. So Ziri muklam babam samayim gufa. So over there, no, we'll say we're talking about the machlokas over here, as we first suggested, is that maybe the whole machlokas is according to Ziri. What is the size of a carmelis? Tanakama holds up until 3, has to be 3 tefachim wide, and Rabbi Yochanan holds, or Shimon Gamliel will hold, it has to be 4 tefachim wide. Fine. And Rav Dimi Tanahi, and that which Rav Dimi said was machlokas Tanaim in terms of how light it has to be. So Gemara says, why don't we say like this? If the river, right, is a carmelis, right? Then the water that comes off and through the yards should be basically an extension, right? The holes of a carmelis. They should be holes of a carmelis, and therefore, right, it should be usher, because just like holes, like parts of a Rosh Hashanah, like a Rosh Hashanah, so too, these should be Chari carmelis, and Chari carmelis should be usher to go ahead and take from the river and into the house. Sabayi Baravin Rabbi Chanina. So a couple answers. Sabayi Baravin Rabbi Chanina Baravin Dami Tavai. First they said Ein Chorin the Karmas. First of all, that which we say, there's Chorin the Shus Rabbin, there's holes of Shus Rabbin, anything off to the side of it is partly Shus Rabbin, was only said about a place which is deraisa, such as Rosh Rabbin. But a Karmelis, it's only derabanan. There is no such thing as Chorin the Karmelis. And Ramashi Amar Afila Tema Yesh Chorin the Karmelis Hani Mili Besmucha Haba Muflagas. Maybe even if we might say there's such thing as these charir karmelis, but that's only said if it's right next to each other. But over here, since the water goes off, right, and it's separated, it's no longer considered part of that other karmelis, and therefore would not be forbidden. And Ravina Omar Kagoyin Davila Nifke Apume V'Osa Rabban L'Tamei V'Rabishim Ben Galil L'Tamei. Over here, maybe the whole machlok is different. Maybe we're talking about that by the entrance. They close off the entrance where the water enters, and that we're talking about if the entrance is more or less than 3 according to the Tanakama, right? That's considered to be like closed. Lovud and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel would hold it has to be 4. It can be a little wider for the entrance to go in. If it's within 4, then you can go ahead and take it out. Why can you take it out? Because you say lovud is considered to be walls, and if it's only less than 3, according to the Tanakama, it has to be less than 3, because then you say lovud with the walls there, and that's the reason why you can go ahead and take out the water. But we're not referring to the width of the water at all, rather referring to the width of the entrances that where you make by the wall, where the water enters into the yard. Fine.
Yo, this may be a stupid question, but water rises and lowers all the time.
Water, it does, but over here we're referring to that. I guess the water is basically at the water level where the water comes in, and so you have the walls all the way to the ground. The question is how close they come together. You know what I'm saying? So if it's 3. So according to the opinion holds that since it's less than 4, it's considered like it's enclosed. If it's considered like it's closed, doesn't matter where the water level is here, right?
Okay.
So water level is here, as long as these 2 sides are here, since it's within 4, it's considered to be enclosed, and therefore you can draw water out in the yard. But if it's more than 4 and the water goes through, it doesn't matter how high the water is, right? It's going to be considered part of the carmelis and therefore be forbidden. Okay. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Zak the Mishnah. Gezutra shehi lamala min amai. If you have the balcony over the water, which we've seen this case earlier, you can't go ahead and raise from Shabbos. You can also so if you have basically a porch or balcony over a river, right? I don't know, in Venice, right? Whatever it is, you have it over, right? So the balcony, if you have walls, now whether the walls are basically, when you're standing there going up, like protect people from falling over, or the walls are, let's say, underneath the platform, right? You have the platform and you have the walls underneath it. If those walls are going down 10 tefachim, then you can go ahead and draw the water, and if not, you can't. The change takes zusar zol malam so if you have one on top of the other, and we'll say this later in the Gemara. If you made walls to the top one at the bottom, they can't do it because even though they're close together, but since there is no eruv between balcony A and balcony B, therefore balcony A, basically the other people ruin the balcony because it's close within the other one. So even the one with the walls cannot go ahead and bring it because they don't have an eruv with the other balcony. So let's see the Gemara first. First, the Gemara says, right? Our mission does not appear to go like Reb Chanan ben Akavi, who we've been discussing all day today. The Tanya when Rabbi Chanan ben Akavi Omer Gezutra sheyesh ba dal amos al dal amos. If you have a gezutra, a balcony that is 4 amos by 4 amos, which is basically 24 tefachim by 24 tefachim, then we halachically, right? If you make a hole in the middle, and therefore you can go ahead and fill it up, because if you had the hole in the middle, therefore around each hole where the hole is, you have 10 amos in each direction, and we halachically can bend it down, and therefore you need it. But our Mishnah says nothing about chayk, make a hole in the bottom of the floor as long as you have 10 tefachim on each side is fine. Our Mishnah says you need actual walls. So it sounds like our Mishnah is not talking about Chanani ben Akavia. So he says, maybe like we first saw the first teretz, maybe the which he meant was only in the case of the waters like Tveria, since they were surrounded by walls and cities, because it had different banks and cities surrounding it, so therefore it was more enclosed, right? But maybe other waters, right, open waters, maybe that we don't have this heter of Gezutra, which was 4 amos by 4 amos. And Taner Rabban and Gimel Dvarim Hiti Rabbi Chanan ben Akavi LaAnshei Tveria. 3 things Rabbi Chanan ben Akavia permitted for the people of Tveria. So one of them is Memalid Mayim Gezutra. One of them is you're allowed to go ahead and fill up water from the balcony, right? If there's a hole in the middle, which we've discussed a couple times, right? B'Shabbos, you do it on Shabbos. The Taimnin B'Eitza, and then number 2 is you're allowed to go ahead and basically you can store food in the husks or the psilas, we'll soon see, of the from the harvest, right? In the shiloh of tuma. And the last thing is mistakni baluntias. You got to go ahead and dry yourselves with towels on Shabbos. So now let's discuss these 3 things, or 2 of the 3. The other one we'll discuss tomorrow. So you can go ahead and use this 8. Malin. So the first one is you're allowed to go ahead and fill the water. We already discussed that case. The Tain Beitzamai. What's the case of using the husks and the psal? What is that? So the Tiny Lunabai say Hishkim Lahavi Psalis. If one goes out, wakes up early, goes out into the field to bring the husks, right? The psalis, the stuff that was left over from the harvest, right? The stuff remain out in the field, and he comes out early in the morning, takes it out. Now the halacha, if food is susceptible to tumah, you have to moisten it. You have to make it wet, right? So the question is, if you go ahead and either you make it wet or it is made wet with your approval, then that is now susceptible to tumah. If it never got wet, or if it got wet against your will, or he was indifferent, now it's not considered to be huchshel the tumah. So if he got up early to go ahead and bring the psolas, if he got up early to go ahead and collect the husk, and because he wanted to get early in the morning, because that's when the morning dew was on it, because he wanted to be wet, it's considered to be already moistened for the state of tumah, and therefore it is settled to tumah. However, so if it's he got up early because he has to be at minyan at 6:25 at Kins, he has to be ready to go for brachos, and therefore he had to do it at 5:30, and it happened to be wet then. But the reason was he went to get it was not because he wanted it wet; he just wanted to do it so it wouldn't be mevatel from his malacha. That's not considered to be b'chiyutan. That's not considered to be moistening it for the purpose of tuma. The stam anshe Tveria, and the people of Tveria kami shleivatel malachta dami. Those people were hard workers, and therefore they got up early. He said it wasn't for the purpose of having dew on it; rather, it was for the purpose of not not missing work, and therefore it was not susceptible to tuma. And that was another halacha that he said for them. And then the other case of the towels, we will discuss tomorrow. Mitzvah Shem. Everybody have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll have some clarity as to our election process today.
Thank you.
All right, bye bye.
And Rebbe, any updates on doing shul shir? Because I'm really not paying attention. Not that I do it shir, but I pay attention less.
I'll call the rabbi. I'll find out. Oh, will you? All right.
Okay.